Hey everybody, Robert Sell, frequent traveler, and today we're going to talk a little bit more about the COVID virus, the coronavirus, or whatever they're calling it these days. Really interesting news. As you can see, I'm not at home. I'm traveling, so I'm still traveling. Today I'm in Denver, and very interesting because nobody here really seems that concerned about the virus. The state of Colorado so far doesn't have any recorded infections, which is good, even though it's very cold here. So you'd think that it would be more susceptible than, say, a warmer place. When I was flying here, I was the only one on the plane wearing a mask. And I could see people looking at me, kind of joking around, like, what's that dude doing? And it was the first time in a month that I'd experienced that, which was a bit weird because a month ago, there was even less people typically wearing a mask in North America. Usually you would just see some Asian people coming perhaps from Asia wearing a mask, but perhaps there was none of those people on my particular plane. But anyways, because it's getting so bad, I'm wearing a mask in the airport and on the plane, and I'm doing all the other precautions that I've talked about. So, it's a little bit embarrassing, but it's a small price to pay because I really don't want to get this virus. So let's start off with the good news. I've got some good news. I've got some bad news, and then I've got some really bad news, and then I've got some global news, and then I'm going to talk about things that we should be looking at buying right now. And because I like to shop, I'll just say that right now. I like to shop. I buy a bunch of stuff. I probably shouldn't, but I'm a consumer. But there's certain things that I think people should be thinking about buying right now. And depending on your financial status and how much you're willing to spend to mitigate your risk, that's something you need to think about. That's nobody can really make those decisions for you. So as I go through that list, just think about that. Some things I think are more important than others, and I'll talk about that. But first, the good news. So thank you, John Hopkins, for bringing back your map of the situation. Fantastic. It's a beautiful map, and it looks really cool to have it on the screen. And when this first started, I thought it was an excellent resource. But that leads me to the bad news, which is it's no longer really relevant. The reason for me saying that, even though it has been a fantastic map, and I think it was well worth doing to raise awareness, but the fact of the matter is now that it just doesn't matter, right? The numbers are wrong. China was not transparent, so we came out of the gate with bad numbers. Everybody knows those numbers are higher. Some people are saying much higher. So, it kind of told us, okay, things are getting worse, but how much worse, we don't know. And now we see things with Iran and other countries, Italy, where their numbers are coming out, but they're wrong as well. And I would say that I'm not biased that way. I would say every country's numbers are wrong. Some of that is perhaps they don't want to, excuse me. Excuse me. So perhaps they don't want to be embarrassed. Perhaps they don't want to cause panic. But also, I think for reporting, it's very difficult for the governments to be able to keep up in real time with the current status. So best case, these numbers are greatly delayed. So I don't even look at the map anymore because it's useless. We know that this is now a pandemic. We know it's now spread to multiple countries, and there's no stopping it. So the cat's out of the bag. So what's that map really going to show me? I mean, I still look at it a little bit, but it's not what it used to be, of course, right? So we're too late for that. Okay, so what else is going on? Really good week, I think, because the CDC now is saying that we need to prepare for the worst. That's not good when they say that, right? If they say prepare for the worst, that kind of makes me a bit nervous. So, the worst is a pandemic. People don't want to say the word pandemic, right? If you go on YouTube or if you do any research on the news, any of this stuff, people don't want to say pandemic. Like I'll say it, like we're in a pandemic. Like if you look up the definition of pandemic, I'm pretty sure this is it, right? And sure, if you don't want to agree with that, wait a week, right? Because it's coming. Look at the trend analysis. I mean, that's all you got to do. So anyway, prepare for the worst. That doesn't sound good. pandemic. Yeah, that's not going to be good. Even if it's not that bad, which I think it's going to be plenty bad, but even if it's not that bad, like let's say we take a 5% hit across the board, um, you know, maybe the economy goes down by 5%, sales go down by 5%, whatever you want to look at. Even that small dip is going to have pretty significant repercussions around the world, right? We're going to see definitely some really bad things as far as the health perspective, the hospitals. We're going to see an economic perspective as well. That's not going to be good. So it's not going to be very pleasurable, I would expect, over the next year or two. What I would expect will happen very quickly is kids will begin to do their schoolwork from home. So we'll have homeschooling. A lot of the schools now have very excellent online resources, some better than others. So I would expect that during this sort of transitional period, while we wait for a vaccine, we're going to see more of that. So when I talk to people that are running those sort of facilities or resources, I talk to them about their capacity. So do they have capacity on their VPN, or do they have capacity for providing people with the ability to homeschool? So kids putting their homework in through email, or having an online portal for the school, or whatever like that. And the same applies to us adults, right? So for example, I like to work from home. I can do that every once in a while. If this gets worse, we're going to see more people working from home more often. So if you have an organization, let's say you have a staff of 1,000 people, maybe every day you have 100 people working from home. Well, what's going to happen when 1,000 people work from home every day, right? Your setup may not have the capacity to support that. So, I think that if you're a company, especially a small company that maybe has not really thought this through, I think every company needs to think about it, but I think that the small and medium-sized companies are the ones that have perhaps the more cost-effective equipment that maybe doesn't scale as well. So something to think about there if you're a company, or even if you're an employee, right? What is that going to mean to you? Can you work from home, and are you going to get paid for it? So we're going to see lost wages, because some people can't work from home. If you're a taxi driver, you can't really just work at home, right? You have to have people in your car and you're driving them around. So not really an industry, and that's just one of many that caters to the whole work from home and isolate yourself and your family type of strategy. So we're going to see some issues there. We're also going to see issues with first responders, and you can kind of look at this as far as what other countries are doing and how they're suffering, right? So if you look at China, great example, a lot of their first responders died. A lot of their first responders had major health issues, and just from being awake so long, right? And the stress of seeing people pass away, the families that are in distress, all of those things are going to fry your nerves, are going to give you all sorts of health issues. So it's going to be really tough on those people, and our ability to try to support them is going to be critical. Also, the supplies, right, is going to be another issue, right? Supplying them with all the things that they need as far as face masks and things like that. So I think that that's going to be another concern as well, right? I think in North America, and probably Europe for that matter, we're pretty well prepared, as well as we can be. However, that's not going to be sufficient. No matter how well prepared we are, it's simply not going to be sufficient, right? We won't have enough of everything. So that's going to be something to watch out for. And I think that we need to take this time to slowly ramp up, slowly prepare ourselves for, what could be pretty bad for the next, year until we get a vaccine, right? So what we see right now in the news, South Korea is on the highest possible alert status. So very similar to China. And look at how quickly we got there, right? Within a week or two, we went from almost, very little concern to the highest concern possible. Right now, government there, very much like China, can take private property, can lock down cities. So that's what we're going to start seeing. So that's very concerning. It's martial law, basically, right? What we'd refer to as martial law in North America. So that's bad, right? And that happened very quickly. What's even more scary to me is in Iran, we see the deputy minister tested positive for COVID-19. He was on the news. This is a big deal. A lot of people are watching this, talking about it. They have 95 confirmed cases so far. But, those numbers are wrong as well. So we all know that there's way more. The neighboring countries have closed borders with Iran. That doesn't happen unless there's major concern. You don't just do that. There's protocols in place for when you would do that, and they're all bad. So yeah, Australia, Switzerland, Croatia is now reporting its first cases. So we're starting to see the same thing there. And this is how it starts, right? We get a little bit, and then we get a lot. So yeah, the US, North America. So the numbers have really climbed in North America, especially the US. We're starting to see quite a bit more across most of the states. I just mentioned at the beginning of this video that I'm in Colorado. There's no reported cases here yet, but I would guess that there's people infected here. So one interesting thing that I saw was the US currently has 30 million face masks on standby, ready for first responders. That's a big number. 30 million, right? That's quite a few. However, experts are saying that won't be enough for a widespread outbreak. They're estimating that we would need 300 million. So that's, times 10 more, right? So that's a lot. The White House has requested $2.5 billion to start the fight of this virus. $2 billion. That's a lot of money. So because this is going to take great effort, there's going to be a lot of different things that we have to do to get through this, right? And we also saw, especially today, the stock market taking a hit. There's a lot of discussion on that, and I won't get into that too much because I'm not a financial expert. I don't know too much about it other than this is what we were expecting. China is one of the biggest, well, the biggest manufacturing country, and by far. And so, of course, when they shut down factories, that's going to have an impact. But what we're going to see is all countries are going to have that sort of issue. So that's going to be quite interesting. So that's where we are right now as far as the news. One of the interesting things in the news that I think is good is that the news is now taking this very seriously. Before, it was kind of like, well, we got this virus. It's just like the flu, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not like the flu. I think we're past that point now, right? Where we think it's just the flu. And I'm not even going to get into the mortality rate right now because, we could debate that, and I have with some people. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know. You don't know. It looks like it's higher than 2%. So I would suspect it's higher than 2%. But some people are saying, no, it's just 2%. Not going to debate that. But there's the risk that it is. And we're definitely seeing people die and it's not just the young and the old. So just going to leave it there. Let's do more research into that. Let's find out more. But I think there's definitely risk there. Now, as promised, let's talk about what we want to do as individuals. And this channel is about travel. I try to give good guidance on travel, on what you can do to have a more pleasurable experience. And I think that right now, I would say probably don't travel. But if we have to travel, let's do it safely. And in my other videos, I talk about how you can do that. But if you're not going to travel, if you're going to stay at home for a little while, I think that this is an excellent time to kind of begin to prepare your household and yourself for what we're going to be up against, right? So some of the things I'm doing right now is I'm starting to slowly buy more things that I think I will probably need. And some of those things include food items, right? So if we get into a position where we can't go out as much, if we're told to shelter in place and try to outlast this virus and not infect each other by just staying at home, some of the things I want to have are things like flour, right? And we often don't think about flour, but it's actually, you can make a lot of stuff out of flour. You can make all baked goods, you can make pasta, cookies, whatever, right? So for me, flour would be a big bag of flour, very cheap to buy, lasts a long time, and you can do a lot with it, right? Just basically add water and a few other things, and you're good to go. Rice is another good one. Big bag of rice, that'll last you a long time. It doesn't go bad right away, and you're going to probably use it later anyway. So this is not just wasted money on something you might need. You can always cook your rice or whatever, or your flour, Instant noodles, for those of you that like instant noodles, they never seem to go bad. That's another thing that you could look at. Canned food, of course, so that's something that I've been buying, and I'm not going overboard. I bought a dozen cans of stuff last week, and I think that's a logical way to proceed with this, where you're just buying a little bit as you go forward. I think some items are going to become very expensive very quickly, just like what we saw with the masks. So I would suggest you start to look and at least think about those. The other thing is just water, right? So if this does get really bad, having some containers of water, I have these. I don't really suggest this. You might want to get a bigger container. I don't think water is going to be a problem unless you live in an area where it could be, depending on your situation, right? So that's something you have to think about. Now, some of the things that I've bought, which I think you should start to think about as we get into this. One of those is a thermometer. And the reason why that's important is if you have a family and you're going out and you want to, you're going out to travel, or you're going out to get groceries, and you want to check your family or yourself for symptoms. Well, one of the things is the blood pressure checker, and I talked about that in a previous video. Those are very cheap and very affordable. But the other one is a no-touch thermostat, and or thermometer rather, not thermostat, thermometer. And basically, that's what we see in some of the videos in China, where they're kind of pointing at the person's forehead, and it's got a little handle with a little mechanism right here, and it's got a digital readout. And you can buy one of those. They're $50 to $100, so they're not cheap. But if you've got kids and they get sick, it's you could use it for that later on. So I think that's pretty handy. I just put an order in for one of those. The other thing that I'm hearing people talk about a lot is furnace filters. And I never really thought about this, but if we're going to shelter in place and we're going to work from home, and you're in an area where you have a furnace, let's say, or any sort of air circulation, I think apartment buildings are kind of notorious for this, where you may be sharing the same air. I'm actually in a hotel room right now, and I turned off the air because I know I'm in a tower, and it's going to be sharing some of the air, I would suspect, with the other rooms. And so I just turned it off because I don't want to risk that. This is a very densely populated building. So I think that even though there's no infections here on record, I just want to play it safe. So I did that. But buying a furnace filter and buying one with the appropriate rating, and the appropriate rating, what I've seen is they usually have a number on them, and anywhere from, say, 1,500 to 2,000 looks like it might be sufficient, but do your homework on that. I haven't looked into it extensively. The other thing with furnace filters is to make sure you get the right size. So 16 by 25 is very common, but go check your furnace filter if you got one, and do that. Another thing that I actually just bought tonight was a pressure sprayer. So what I'm thinking is, if I have to go out, if it gets really bad, I go out, buy groceries for my family, I come back, I probably want to, go through some sort of decontamination setup. And we see these actually a lot in China, where people are walking around with the sprayers. And that's what this is. It's just a big bucket that's sealed, and you pump it to build up pressure. And then it allows you to spray the stuff out through the wand. And what you'd be spraying would be like a water bleach mixture. And there's certain chemicals you can buy as well that do something similar. I think I forget what it's called, but it's for cleaning your pool. And if any of you know, please put it in the comments. That'd be really great for me to talk about next time. But you can buy those as well. I just bought bleach. I'll mix that with water. That will probably do the trick. And I would wear some sort of high-bec suit, or just get plastic and just tape the plastic over me, so I could go out and just get sprayed down if it gets to that. If it doesn't, I'm going to use this pressure sprayer for watering the lawn later on, or something like that, right? So but those, I think, are going to sell out pretty quick as this gets worse. So that would be the next item really to take a look at. The other thing that I bought is plastic sheeting. So if we need, let's say one of your family members gets sick, and I have a family of 4. I have 2 boys, and I would not want the other people to get sick necessarily. So how do you prevent that? Well, you'd want to build a quarantine room in your place if you can, if you've got the room to do that. And so what I would do is use this plastic sheeting, and it's very affordable. It's the same plastic sheeting that you can buy at the hardware store that people use for when they fiberglass their walls, and they put the fiberglass into the wall, and then they have to put the plastic over and staple it in place. So you just get a roll of that. You can use it for a bunch of different things down the road, but I think for me, I would probably use it for that kind of quarantine type of setup if I needed to do that, right? So $10, super cheap. The other thing, of course, is duct tape. I have a couple rolls of duct tape somewhere in the house, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to buy a couple rolls of duct tape just to have that ready as well. Biohazard bags. I didn't buy those. I've got lots of garbage bags. The biohazard bags are a little more heavy duty, and they have that biohazard symbol on it. So I think that, that might be something to get. But I'm not buying those just yet because I've got garbage bags. What I did buy is eye goggles, and I found some on Amazon which were about $10, and they're kind of the construction style ones, but they seal around your eye. And so if you've got the N95 mask on and then you've got the goggles on, I think that's pretty good. So especially for $10, that was actually pretty cost effective. So I bought a couple of those just in case. I would not wear those in the airport just yet. Well, you never know. I say that, and it's getting worse every week. So, maybe next time I will. But right now, I just have the plain clear glasses that I wear. And then the final thing that I was looking at was rubber boots. And I didn't buy any rubber boots yet because I would probably never wear them for anything else except for this. But I think that, that's an option as well. If you were to wear your full kind of hazmat suit or high-bec suit, then the rubber boots allow you to get sprayed down in that decontamination spray without ruining your shoes. You can also take some plastic and duct tape and just tape over your shoes, I suppose. But rubber boots would just make life that much easier. So those are the things I'm looking at right now. I'm going to fly back from Denver on Friday, so I'm going to be here a couple more days. But yeah, I'm not sure how much more travel I'm going to do because it seems like it's getting much worse every day now. Now it's gone global, and it's really everybody's paying attention to it. I got an email from one of the people who I was going to go visit in April, and they're saying, okay, we think it's still good. We think it's still fine to travel, but we're going to keep an eye on it. And I was like, if we're thinking about it now, it's a long time from now to April. So my guess is that, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, of course, right? So I would suspect a lot of my travel is going to get canceled. And now I'm starting to wonder, what's that going to mean to my hotel? Is that refundable? My Airbnb, is that going to be refundable? My flight tickets, I mean, those weren't cheap. Are those going to be refundable? I'm not sure what the airlines are going to do, right? Because they're going to be losing huge amounts of money if this goes on for a while, which it will. We should expect bankruptcies. Is the government then going to supply them with money to bail them out, like we saw with the car industry? It's just, I see this huge cascade of issues, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this all works out. My hope is that this just goes away. My hope is we get a vaccine, or it's seasonal. So there's been some talk about that. Maybe it's seasonal, and maybe when we get into the summer, it's all going to go away. But at the rate of spread right now, I think that even if it does get better in the summer, we're going to see some pretty massive infection rates from now till then. Hey, Clairvoyant, I see you commenting there. Yeah, I think that, people, if you're wearing a mask in a public setting, depending on where you are, especially if there's no recorded infections there yet, people will often look at you weird, like, what are you doing? And there's this weird thing that that people go through, right? Because you're different if you're wearing one. You're the crazy person. But I think we got to do what we got to do. So, oh, you're in Colorado too? Okay, cool. Yeah, I come here quite a bit. It's a great place to be. I really enjoy it here, and hopefully it stays uninfected, stays safe. I hope the airport seems pretty good. But I'm just taking it a day at a time. So I'm not sure. I'm supposed to come back in 2 weeks, but we'll see what that's like, day at a time. So it's getting a lot. It's getting bad pretty quick. So I'm just not sure. So unless there's any more questions, I'm going to wrap it up now. It's I got through all the items I had to share. All right. Well, stay safe out there. Safe travels. I'll see you soon.